Sean Reidy says, have you ever built or designed a mobile workshop? I'm presently building a rig for full-time traveling and including functions for making and building. If you were to make an Adam Savage touring vehicle for attending conventions and various trips, what would the tent poles be? What would the form factor be? Well, you know, I want what everyone wants. I want a Sprinter van. I want to stand up inside that puppy and have a full working shop. I've got a lathe in storage just waiting for a Sprinter van, man. Yes, I have bivouacked my shop out into the world many, many times. And it's a really particular kind of mindset that I really enjoy. I made a very rough list here. The things you're going to want to bring on a small working shop, you're going to have to assume that some chemicals will be bought in the field because you can't possibly bring all the chemicals that you'd need. But, you know, you can bring a complement of 5-minute epoxies and CA glues. And I would certainly, a travel kit for me now would include some UV sensitive glue, which Evan and Caitlin introduced me to recently. And I know it's just the stuff we're 3D printing with, but using the acrylic stuff in here has been a game changer for me. The tools are all really, really simple. The pliers, hand saws, screwdrivers, vice grips, pry bar. You want a light. You want as many forms of light as, you want like 4 different flashlights. You want a head, you want something mounted on your head, you want something you can hold in your hand. Magnifiers. Again, if you're getting older like me, you're gonna need magnifiers. Tweezers, rags. And then start to think about the things that can solve many problems at once, like plumber's epoxy. These are the kind, so when I'm making a bivouac kit, that's the kind of thing I'm thinking of. I'm thinking of like, what is the, you want to bring some esoteric tools that will be hard to find in the field, but you also got to bring the basic complement of the dumb stuff, the really, really straightforward stuff. Now, all that being said, the biggest time I set up a mobile workshop was in the production of Savage Builds, which is 2018? Or did I shoot that in 2019? Yeah, I can't remember anymore. Somewhere in the past, I made a show called Savage Builds, and we rented a warehouse down in Hunters Point, and regular watchers of this channel know that everything on my shop is on wheels. And we utilized that for Savage Builds by pushing all of the tools and material storage out of my cave into the show's workshop in Hunters Point, which I thought was like, I am brilliant. I put the stuff on wheels and now I moved my shop. And then the first weekend I came back here and I like couldn't cut a thing in half. There were no scissors, there were no blades, there was not even a pocket knife. And I realized I had done a violence to my weekends by not, I took the whole thing. I did not leave anything here for me to use. And that was a mistake. I suffered a bit for that. You're going to want to choose an organizational method that is fast at taking down and putting up. I would assume if you're going to be working out in the field, you don't want to get too persnickety and precise about how you lay out your tools, simply because it's going to be harder to put them all back in a very specific way later. You might want to choose a looser way of storing them and sorting them so that the threshold to entry is a little lower. You don't want to be daunted by like, oh, I got to take all these out and then I got to put them all back because there's no other place for them to go. The other thing is I would keep track of the maker spaces near you in your travels. Yeah. You're building a rig for full-time traveling. So you're outfitting your RV with a mini makerspace. That's super, super cool. I would consider bringing an A1 mini 3D printer. In the $300 range for 3D printers, it's a monster. It's phenomenal, and it's almost as fast as the Bamboo Carbons. I have one in my office at home and run it weekly. I would love... So, I think the other part of this question is, you want to know what I would do with my Sprinter van. If I had a Sprinter van and I was kitting it out to be a shop, I would have a complete machine shop in there. And I wouldn't have a smithy either. That's the lathe mill combo. I'm not interested in that. I'd have probably a Precision Matthews lathe and a benchtop mill, smaller than the one that I've got. The mill would end up being the drill press. I would have a porta band saw and probably a contractor's table saw. I don't think it'd have a chop saw. Rivets, staples. Yeah. I mean, in a Sprinter, I could kit out 90% of the basic hand tools that I use in here. Material storage would be tougher. Yeah. I mean, there's part of me, right, that just wants to like kit out my Land Cruiser for the apocalypse and just build out in the field forever. That's a lovely, lovely dream. Ziz62266 says, years ago, I built a small vacuum former out of a space heater and a sorted 1x-pine and my 6-gallon shop vac. Excellent, excellent, excellent vacuum form materials. My vac pulls are passable, but I have trouble with tighter recesses like inside corners. Any suggestions for improving performance or redesign? Yes. Okay. First of all, you're having trouble with tight recesses. Among the things you can do is you could mount your piece before it goes on the platen of the vacuum former. You could put it on a piece of wood or something like wood at the base of which you've drilled some holes that will localize the vacuum negative pressure to the corner that you are looking for more definition from. So that's one way to get definition out of corners, is to drill a hole in that corner and allow the vacuum, the air from the vacuum to find a pathway that will pull on that piece of plastic. That's one. Number two is cornstarch or talc. And remember, talc is no longer something you want to breathe a lot. Cornstarch or talc both work as a way of dusting your buck before vacuum forming. And what they do is they create, because they're very fine particulate, they actually create a lower friction when the plastic hits the surface of your buck and allows that plastic to move over the buck a little bit. So cornstarch is another great way, or talc, to get more definition. The best way, though, is to use a helper. So if I was going to do something like this Coke can, which would be a nightmare to vacuum form, you're going to get webs and strings up the sides here. But if you had to do it, I would take a circle of wood with a slight relief on the inside edge, and after I put the plastic down over the vacuum form, I would push that helper down. Now, what you need to know is that, like, plastic packaging is all vacuum formed. You know, double clamshells at the store, those are all vacuum formed, and none of them are vacuum formed without a top helper. In fact, there's always two pieces of an industrial vacuum form mold. There is the buck that is the positive, the plastic pulls over, and then there is almost always a helper that is, in many ways, the reverse of the shape of the buck with some allowances for the thickness of the plastic that help guide the plastic where you want it to go and not get webs. Now, I'm so happy you had a vacuum forming question, because a vacuum former arrived here at the cave, made by the Vacuum Form Company. I have talked about this vacuum former for a long time, and I bought one last year. I didn't buy one, actually. A fan offered to give me one, and we paid for shipping, and it got here, and I did a whole show and tell with it. And then another of the same unit shows up with just this on the package. Happy birthday, Adam. It was my birthday last week. Thank you. This one says it's from Michael Peterson. 80, I won't give the address, but they're from San Francisco. Hey, if this is you, would you let me know that you sent this? I like a note in the thing. It's come with some extra light bulbs and some extra weather stripping. It's an amazing thing. Thank you. Thank you. I just would love some more information. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I wanted to briefly mention that you could become a tested member. I know everybody is competing for you to become a member of their thing. What I want to express to you is that the Tested membership has become such an important part of the Tested family. We get tremendous feedback from the Tested members, and they expand the stories that we can tell and the things that we have access to. And you can become a part of it right now by clicking on the link below. See you in the chat.